Hello, my name's Chris. I lead customer success here at Unstack, and I'll be walking you through the platform. This video is a long-form video, however it's broken up section by section, going over each piece of the application. If you want to go section by section, feel free to reference the YouTube description below to find the time codes, or watch the entire thing to master the platform. We do suggest having the application open in a different tab in your browser, so that you can reference the app whenever you're confused or want some hands-on experience. Please do remember, our editor is all trial and error. So, if you're really wanting to learn this, you're going to have to put in just about an hour or two of exploring the app and really getting used to the page editor. We have a groundbreaking editor, but with every single new application, there's a learning curve. So feel free to embrace it, and if you need help with your learning curve, feel free to go to help.unstack.com to explore our help documentation. Hello again. Welcome to the Unstack application. First, to navigate here, we'll go to Website. Once on the website page, we'll see the listing of all of the pages currently active in our account. You'll notice that they're all listed right here, and it's showing me their page name. This is the internal Unstack name, the page status, the total number of views this page has received, and when it was last updated. Let's go ahead and scroll through this to the next page. You'll notice I can also search pages by name if I need to find a specific page. And if I need to edit a page's settings, I can click this hamburger to open the options drawer. But first, let's talk about the actual page editor and jump into it. I just wanted to preface this so that you understand where we are and how to navigate and what you're currently seeing on your screen. Up here is, of course, the traffic that your pages are receiving. You can see this more in depth on the Insights page. But for right now, let's open a new page and talk about the page editor. I'm going to click the New Page button. Another option I do have is Templates, where I could select from whatever pre-made templates and use this in the account. But since I want to start from scratch and go right from the ground up, I'm going to begin with just a new blank page. Now that we're within the page editor, let's talk about what we're looking at here. You'll notice up here is my header, which you can change in Elements. Up here is the main toolbar, which holds the page name, the back button if I want to return, the publish button, the eye icon that expands the setting drawer, and a preview button if I want to see what this page would look like live without actually setting it live. Then down here, I have my footer, which I can once more edit in Elements, and I have my Publish Changes button. Now, in between both of those things, I have my component editor. And you'll notice right now, since no components exist, it's asking me which component I'd like to start with. Unstack is a component-based editor, meaning each page is comprised of different components stacked on top of each other to build up an entire page. That also means that each customization you make happens component by component. Let's begin by adding a media component to this page. You'll notice that will now drop into the editor and display here. You'll notice that I have my main toolbar. This is how I edit the component altogether. Then I have different toolbars that appear when I hover the elements within that component. This is how I edit the image and the text. Let's begin by adding some content so that we can visually see the changes we'll make in the main toolbar. While we add this, we'll go over what we're doing and why we're doing it. First, to add an image, I'm going to click this placeholder image. I won't click up here since this is my background image and this is my foreground image. I'll click here to actually add an image into this box, or element for the name. We'll go today with somebody placing a sticky note on a whiteboard. You'll notice I have three options here. My alt text, which I can use and say, alt text is important for SEO, those who are visually impaired, and explaining what an image is. Then I can link to something. This is so if somebody clicks that image, it'll link out to an external URL or a different page within your Unstack site. I'm going to skip this for now, but I can easily just type in a page name and select from the dropdown. This is called smart linking. This is technology we have here at Unstack, so even if the page's URL changes, the smart link will always be up to date. To remove this, I'll click the X next to the smart link I just inserted. Then I have my image optimization settings. This is where I can shut off optimization, turn it to resize only, or have it to not resize or optimize. If you're noticing optimization is causing an issue, I highly suggest simply doing resize only. I almost never suggest doing do not resize or optimize, as it may make the image look weird. Let's jump back to the editor since we might feel a bit out of place. What we were just looking at was your media library. This is where your images, videos, embeds, and our stock media are stored. You can upload by clicking the blue plus button. You can also upload a video here, or embed a YouTube video by pasting its link here. YouTube, Vimeo, or Wistia. Let's go back to the editor since we have this image in here, and let's add some text content so that we can add some content to this and begin on going through the customizations that we have. Great, so now that we have some example content within this page, let's talk about customizing it. First, we'll begin here in the main toolbar, which is going to customize the entire component, meaning that all of this will change, not just a specific element within the component. We'll begin by going over section height. Section height can either be content height or screen height. Let's talk about the difference. Content height accommodates the items and elements within the component along with the spacing that you set in the spacing options, whereas screen height aims to fill the normal desktop screen size. Then we have layout. Layout is extremely important. So if you have a notepad out right now or anything, write layout in all capitalization and underline it. Layout is going to be your best friend while you're exploring the Unstack editor. This is where you can completely change how a component looks without having to change the component. So for media here, you have media left, full media, which entirely expands it to fill the component, centered media, and media right. These are amazing options, and you'll also notice that a little plus and gem of Unstack is all of it saved. So even when my text wasn't available or visible on the screen, it's still there. So my content didn't get deleted just because I was scrolling through layouts. Let's collapse that sub toolbar and move on to our H. Our H is the way to toggle a header above any component. This is especially resourceful whenever you're adding text or need to add something above a component without having to add another component on top of it just to accommodate. A fun fact about Unstack is when it's blue, it's on, when it's white, it's off. So if I click this H, it'll turn blue to indicate that it's now on. If I click it again, it'll turn white to indicate it's off. Let's add a header. You'll notice I have this lightning icon. We'll get into this more in depth on the text editor, but this lightning icon resembles that we can add an action button or an action link here. So when I click on the lightning icon, a drawer will appear with primary button, or text link. By clicking one of these options, I can insert any of those into this area. You'll also be able to add a form in specific sections. Let's toggle this off for now. Then we have spacing. Spacing is a great tool. This allows me to add more space on the top, to the right, to the left, or to the bottom of a component. Then we have max width. Max width doesn't have many use cases since it's a pretty niche item, but this is how you can constrain the component to a specific width. No worries about mobile optimization, we'll automatically do that for you natively here at Unstack. Then you have alignment. Alignment is how you can align a section left, right, or center. And you can add what we call background media. You might be wondering why it's background media and not just a background image. Well, the great thing there is that it can be a video or an image, so it's not just images. And with Unstack native video, you don't have to worry about hosting it on your own, uploading it to a CDN, or anything like that. We'll add a background image just for the example. Okay, this is looking pretty dark, but let's run through the options and then we'll fix how dark it looks. First off, over here, we have our option of how it displays. You'll see this full screen. That means cover. Cover will cover the entire component, so it won't let the image not cover everything. Then you have contain. Contain will strive to have the component completely contain the full image. Grid will repeat the image as many times necessary to fill the component. I suggest cover, but it's completely up to you. Then you have your alignment options. First, we'll begin with the vertical. This is how you can align left, align right, or align center. So if you want a specific piece of the image to show first, you can use this alignment tool. Then you have top, bottom, and center. Now down here, we have our scroll speed, or as commonly referred to, parallax. This is how to make it so that the image scrolls at a different speed than the actual user who is scrolling. There are a lot of options, and this is a great thing to explore. Now, I promised we'd fix this because if you haven't noticed, it looks pretty dark, and my text is now pretty hard to read. So I'll click on my background color, which I can do by clicking this paint can, and I can add a color to overlay this. Since it's pretty dark, I'll add white, which is hex code F repeating. I can also take one of my colors from my Styles Manager, which we'll work on later. I'll use my slider to up the opacity of the white color, just until everything is easily readable in my view sight. And let's get that to an even number. Perfect. So now that my text and my background are both there, this looks like a pretty good component so far. Then we have A/B testing. A/B testing is how to test two variants against each other. To figure this out, go to help.unstack.com and we'll go over A/B testing in full in a different help doc. We won't do it today because we also would like you to learn the best practices before setting up your first A/B test. Then you have anchor linking. Anchor linking is a way to point somebody to a specific part of a page. So you can set an anchor link for a component and then append a # anchor link to the end of the URL to push them directly to that component. Go to help.unstack.com for a full tutorial. Then we have compensation settings. This is how to compensate for a light background or a dark background. If the background is light, select the white background with a black T in front of it. If the background is dark, use the white T with a black background behind it. By clicking these, you'll notice that everything will adjust to compensate the specific compensation setting that you've set up in the Styles Manager. Now let's go over what is to the left and to the right of this main toolbar. Over here to the left, we have where it says Media. Media is simply there as just a label to tell you what component you're currently editing. Over on this side, we have our up and down arrows where we can move this component higher or lower in the order of the page. We can duplicate the component, we can hide the toolbar, and we can delete the component. By clicking Hide, I simply disable my toolbar. To re-enable it, I'll click the component again, and you'll notice it will expand. Clicking Hide does not mean hide the component, it just means hide the toolbar. Now I'll expand my toolbar by clicking on my component again, and we'll talk about the element toolbars that we also have to go over. The element toolbars are the specific toolbars for each element. We'll begin with the image element. So you'll notice I have foreground image, background color, spacing, max width, alignment, animation, box shadow, and border radius. Let's start from the left and work right, and we'll skip anything that we've already gone over. Foreground image is how to add an image on top of your already existing image. So you notice if I add this, it'll put the image directly on top of the other graphic. This is especially useful for designs, graphics, or anything like that. Then we have background image. Background image is how to put an image behind the image itself. We won't do that in this case because it will look a bit weird, but in specific use cases, it is necessary. Then we have spacing, max width, and alignment, which we've already gone over. Animation is the newest one here. This is how to animate that specific element in on page load. To shut off animation, simply reselect the currently blue animation option, turn it white, and then it's off. I'll leave it on for this example. Then we have box shadow. Box shadow will place a tint around the element itself. So if I click it on, you'll notice a tint appears around this image. Border radius is to round the corners. The higher the number here, the rounder the corners. So if I put it up to 30, you'll notice the corners get pretty round. Then over here on the right is our text element. Right here, the only new thing is our text alignment, so we can align center or align left. To actually edit the text itself, simply select the text you'd like to edit, and then using this toolbar, you can run through H1, H2, H3, change the font to one of the fonts you set up in the Styles Manager, change the font size, adjust the font color, make it bold, make it italics, add an underline, make it a quote, code block, checklist, another checklist, or remove all formatting. And to hyperlink something, simply select it and then click this chain here. This is where you can either type in the page name to use our smart linking feature, or type in the entirety of the URL. If you'd like to have it open in a new tab, simply select this button to have it open in a new tab. Once that's blue, click the check mark, and now that link will not only hyperlink to that URL you just inputted, but it will also open in a new tab so the user isn't distracted from what they're currently viewing. Now down here we have buttons. Let's go over the process of adding one. We'll click the lightning icon, and then we can click from this drawer. You'll notice in this drawer we have form as an option too, but for right now we'll add a primary button. I can say click here, and then I would insert my URL. I'm going to send them home when they click this, and I'll open that in a new tab. Perfect. Now if somebody clicks here, they'll be redirected to my home page in a new tab. Let's delete this for now, and let's add a form so that we can go over the options with forms. I'll actually add my call to action component to do so. To add that new component, all I did was click the Add Component button, and then a drawer will open with all the component options. I'll scroll through this until I find call to action, or any component that I want to use here. Click on that, and then I'll say Contact Us. Then I'll click the lightning icon once more to open the drawer, and I'll click Form. I'm going to give this a name of Demo Form, and then today's date. You'll notice that I already have 3 fields here, my full name, my email, and my company name. I can delete some of these off, but mind you, if you delete email, you will actually not be able to store them in your CRM. I'm going to add first name, push that a bit up, and then I can also add generic custom fields, like a multi-line text of how is your day going? Now I can customize my submit button. I can say send. I can customize what happens when somebody submits it. I can either show a message, redirect them to a page, post it to a URL, get to a URL. But in this case, I'll say thanks. Be in touch soon. Then if I have MailChimp, Klaviyo, HubSpot, or any of our other direct API integrations like ActiveCampaign set up, I can select the list I'd like to push them to within that respective application. Then I'll click Save to set up this form, give it just about 2 seconds, and then the form will auto-populate onto my page. And that just about wraps up the page editor. The only last part that I'd like to show you is specific to callout components. Within a callout component, if you'd like to add additional callouts, simply click this plus button. And we talked about it before, and hopefully you have written on your notepad layouts, because layouts are especially important with callouts. To get to a full image instead of the icon size, which is 80 by 80, simply click the layout option and then click full images. I told you, layouts is important, so feel free to utilize this, whatever type of callout section you're trying to set up. And that will wrap up for today. Before we wrap up, let's look at all the hard work we put in. And let's publish this page, or we can preview it using this link. I'll give it just a second so that it can generate my preview, and then we'll see what we created today. Please do note my Wi-Fi is a bit slow, so just give it a moment while everything loads. Nicely done. So this was all of our hard work for today, but let's now publish the page and talk about the information we'll put in here. I'm going to call this demo page, and then I'll put in today's date. But I want my public name to be different than my Unstack name. You'll notice that this is what we call the Unstack name, meaning that private name that the page will only be seen as internally. Publicly, I want to say, welcome to the training. Now over here, I want to say welcome and then /training. This will be my URL where somebody would access this page. Perfect. This all looks really good. So let's go to the actual live page and give it a moment to load. Great, we're really coming along. Next up, we'll talk about blogs, landing pages, and much, much more. So stick along with us so that we can fully get your site set up in just one day. Welcome, you've made it back to the second section. Now we're going to go over landing pages. We won't go over the actual editor, we'll just go over the settings. This is mostly where we'll go more in depth on page settings and options there. And we're going to do this in the landing page settings because this is where more settings appear. So to reach them, I'll go into the editor by clicking on the page that I want to customize, and then click this eye icon up here. The Unstack name is the internal name only for search, so this should be as detailed or as structured as you like it to be, so you can easily search this name within the index page. The title is the publicly appearing title that appears within the browser tab. The URL is how somebody gets to that site page. The description is for SEO and indexing, so make sure that this has some keywords and really talks about what your business is doing. Header layout is how the header will look. This is specific to landing pages right now, so it can be full header, landing page header, or no header. Full header has navigation links, landing page header only has the logo, and no header, of course, just means no header. The footer has full footer, which has navigation links, landing page footer, which just has the copyright symbol, and then no footer, which is no footer. In the danger zone, we have hide this page from search engines. This will make it so that Google cannot find the page. And then we have save and publish or save only. Save and publish will set this to live for the world to view it, and then save only will only save this internally. Then you can clone, unpublish, or delete this page. I know this one was quick, but that is a wrap on landing page settings. I hope that helped, and while you're exploring, feel free to always peruse the templates as they're extremely helpful. And welcome back. This is section 3 to go over the blog settings. I reach this by clicking blog on the left sidebar, and we're going to go over this in a part by part so that we can explain everything. We'll begin up here with our navigation links of categories, layout, and settings, and then we'll go into the specifics of the blog editor and all of that. First, we'll go into categories. This is how you can completely organize all of the blog posts that you're going to make, because hopefully you'll be posting a lot. Here is where you can view and edit all the categories you currently have, or you can click Create New Category. When creating a new category, you're going to want to give it an internal name, a title. This will appear on the index page for that category, so make sure that this is something you want people to see. You'll assign it to a specific blog on your account. Give it a URL structure, so this should be, if it's going to be my PR blog, that should be /PR, and then I'll write. Perfect. Now you can create the category and write an article for it, or just create the category only. I don't want to jump us ahead of ourselves, so I'm just going to create the category only, but feel free to go with the other option. Once that happens, it'll do a quick reload, and then under categories, you'll notice that I will now have the option of PR. We'll talk about assigning a blog to a category once we get to the blog editor. Now let's jump into layout. Layout is going to be how I can customize how people would view my blog. First, we'll begin with the category layout. I can tell I'm currently editing the category layout because there's a blue line below it. You'll notice over here I have the option of grid and list. If I switch it to list, that will show me all of the blogs on this account in a list format. And I can make it so that it will only show a max of 14 by adjusting, by incrementing and decrementing this number. Or I can switch it to grid, which is our new designer layout, where it'll show one masthead latest story, and then everything else will appear in a title format with pagination. That's the basics of the category layout. So now we're going to switch into article. Once more, I know I'm editing my article layout because there's a blue line below the words that say article layout. It'll show me what the story will look like, which is not editable. It'll show me my sidebar and my custom code. In my sidebar, I can add a form, I can add some text and everything. When you're first starting out, you'll notice that it will look like this. I'm going to remove my form and my text. If there's nothing here, the sidebar won't appear and the blog will be centered. But if I add some text like subscribe to my newsletter, and that's a little bit too big, so if I select it and then I use my text editor, I can adjust it down to H3, and give it a strategic underline, maybe make it italics. Then I can maybe send them to a page instead of giving them a form, and I can say, click here to subscribe. And then I could, of course, use our really cool smart linking feature to link them to that page where they would subscribe to my newsletter. There are so many options here, and I can even give them a second button like read the previous emails. Nice. So that looks pretty good for me right now. I have a pretty basic newsletter, so we're not going to go too much beyond that. Now, if I want to add comments to my blog, I could add them from a provider like discuss, or I could simply just inject anything here. I could say, how did you like this blog? And then I can give them a contact email, or I can give them something like Hotjar or any form provider here. Remember that this is custom code, so you can embed anything you'd like. Great, so I really like the changes I made. I like my category layout, my article layout, so I want to make sure I'm going to click this publish button so that I save my changes to my layouts. Without clicking that, it wouldn't have saved and I would have lost all my progress that I made to this really cool layout. I'll click my back button to go to my main blogs, and now we'll talk about settings. Stick with me. I know that this probably sounds like an accounting lesson so far. I promise we're going to get into the fun stuff of actually seeing the blog editor in a second. First, we have the Unstack name, which is once more the internal name. So no worries about how this looks. Just make it so that you know what it means. The title is the public-facing name. This is the thing you have to be concerned about people seeing. Then it'll show you your category URL structure. This is the structure for category pages, and then the article URL structure. I highly suggest blog article, but you can always do category article or blog category article. There's endless amounts. The text within handlebars is going to be inserted. So say my blog name was news, and my category was PR, and my article name was Chris. It'd be /news/PR/Chris. I hope that helped it make sense, but if it didn't, feel free to go to help.unstack.com. I can also make it so that my index page will not appear to search engines, and I can set up my description. This description is so bland. Please do not make yours look like mine. Talk about what your blog will be writing on, talk about what your thought leadership is about, and much, much more. It's extremely beneficial if you do so. Okay, I like to keep my promises, so now we're going to jump into the Unstack editor. And just in our normal fashion, like we did with the page editor, I don't want to jump into anything I've already made. I want to start from scratch because that's where you guys will also be starting from. So let's click New Article. This will open up a fresh new editing page. And you'll notice that my experience is clean and there's not a lot distracting me here. All I have to do is add a title. That's pretty descriptive. Now, I love adding an image to the top of my blog, and I'll do that by clicking this plus button, and I'll be presented with 3 options. I can add an image, a divider, or an embedded video from something like YouTube, Vimeo, or Wistia. I'm going to add an image for now. For some reason, I guess we are really attracted to the sticky notes image for today, so I'll go ahead and add that one in. Now let's talk about what's going on here. This is a great blog editor with simple editing experience and great SEO tools. Okay, that looks pretty bland. So let's spice this up a little bit. Let's talk about, give it a header. Too big. Now let's also give this a checklist. Perfect. This looks really good so far. So now let's just talk about all the other customizations we can make. All of your customizations are at the text level. So you can adjust how text looks. You can give it an underline, make it into a quote format, put it into code block format, or anything like that. Really great tools here. I can even hyperlink some text. So if I want to link to my actual blog, I could say, send them right back to the blog, and I want to open in a new tab. Perfect. That looks great. This is definitely a simple blog post, but that's how we like to keep it. So let me click my eye icon up here to open up this blog post settings. I'll check that the title is what I'd like it to be, and then I'll put it under a specific a category. You'll notice that this is my format because it's in the blog that's named blog, the category that's named news, and my blog post URL is Chris's new blog post. Cool. Okay, so the author will be Unstack Success, and then my author date is a really cool thing that I like to talk about. If I set this to the future, you'll notice I get a really cool option of scheduling. I can either publish this now and act like it was published in the future, or I can schedule this post for September 3rd. And I can also even set the time. This will also go off the time zone that I set in my settings page under app.unstack.com/settings. On this page, this is where I'll set the time zone respective to me. The reason for this is because we'll abide by that time zone when we're publishing your blog. So if you're on Eastern Standard like me, we're not randomly publishing it on Pacific Standard or GMT. So make sure to set up your time zone as soon as possible. Excuse my slow Wi-Fi, we're all working from home right now. So definitely provide me a little bit of leniency. I promise our app is faster. But I'm going to act like I published this today. So you'll notice that my publishing went away since I am publishing on the same day I'm currently writing it. Then I'm going to use this as my featured image. It already gets looped in because we already indexed for the main image, but I can always set a different one. Then I can save and schedule. And now if I go to this URL, my blog will be here. Cool. So you'll even see that it gives me who the author was and what category it's in, so I can go to that category's listing page. So I can go right here. And I can see all the blog posts in this specific category of news. If I had an author's page, I could also link to my author page, but Unstack Success is not that cool just yet. Great. That is how to set up your first blog and manage your blog overall. Next up, we'll talk about the settings page. This will be helpful for looping back in, and then we'll go over elements and styles. So stick with us. We have a bit more to go over. Keep my words, so we're going to go over settings, and then we'll jump into probably the most interesting stuff, at least to me as a designer, for elements and styles. But right now, let's talk about the groundwork we have to put in. So first, my company name. This is what will appear in my URL tab bar. So this is important that it's your company's readable name. Even if you're a self-starter, put your full name here. Then my time zone, which is super important. And then my team. So you'll notice all of the team members on this account will be listed here. And I can add new ones by going here. I can even set them a role if I want to do contributor or anything like that. And I can also set up their author page if they want one. Then for new contacts, I can opt here to get emails for a new contact. I can set up GDPR messaging on my website, and right here I can set up my custom domain, and it'll provide me my records to set up that domain. Then down here I can use my XML sitemap and my AMP pages for blog posts. And then you'll also notice my billing is down here. This is the setup of your settings. I promise this will be quick, so I'll wrap it up there. But if you have any questions on this, help.unstack.com goes over all of the things that are going on in this page. Okay guys, it's time. We're going to go over the fun stuff. We're now going to talk about elements. Elements is where you'll manage your logos, favicons, social share image, header, and footer. And if you're wondering where those customizations for styling all of the text and buttons on this page is, that's going to be next in styles, so you're going to have to stick around. First, let's talk about logos. You need them, you love them, and you're going to want to get them to upload to your site. To upload a logo, simply click right here. It'll open up your media library, and you can upload it right here and then select the logo you'd like to bring in. You'll need one for light backgrounds and one for dark backgrounds. The one for light backgrounds should be darker, and the one for dark background should be lighter, so that it can be seen in contrast to the background's color. The favicon should be a 32 by 32 PNG image that can be used across your entire website in this browser bar. If you see that smiley face, that's where your favicon will appear. Your social share image will be used whenever sharing links on Twitter, Facebook, or any of those other mediums that expand links. So it's extremely beneficial, so set this as an image that you think represents your brand, or as we do here at Unstack, an image that represents your brand with your logo overlaid on top of it. Now let's talk about the header and the footer. I'm going to begin with the header, and I'm going to begin by destroying mine. So I'm going to delete everything out of it so that we can start from scratch. And before we get started on links, let's go over configuration. So in my header, I have this nifty configure header. When I hover it, it's going to expand the toolbar for customizing my header. I can here set the background color of my header. I'll set it right back to where it was. I can set the compensation settings. So if I click that black chain from a white background, it's going to use my logo for lighter backgrounds, and the versa. I can set my alignment. I can set my logo height. So if your logo is too small, up this height a bit. If your logo is too big, decrease this height. You can do it by clicking these arrows. If your logo isn't centered, you can use the positioning tool to adjust its location on the header. And if you want to add padding to make your header a bit bigger, you can do so by using the padding numeric. Okay, those are the configurations for the header. We'll go over footer when we get there. Now let's go over links. To add a basic link, just click this plus button. You're going to then enter the text that the link should say. So I'll say homepage or just home. And then up here in this tooltip, this is where you'll type in the name of the page and select it from the dropdown. You can also add full URLs here, but we recommend smart linking for any internal links. Then I'll add another for my blog. And these are in a weird position. So let's drag them around using our drag tool. Perfect. Now I want to add one more. I'm going to add about. Now the only issue is I want to add both about the company and about our pricing. I'll do that by clicking this tooltip right here to create a dropdown. Now I can write about the company and pricing plans. Perfect. And same thing that we did above. I'll just type in the page and link to it via our smart linking feature. In case you haven't followed along, smart linking is the ability to type in a page name, and even if the URL of that page updates, the smart link will not break. This prevents 301 URLs or anything that could decrease your Google ranking. Cool. So we have 3 links, one of those being a dropdown, and now I want an action button. So I'll click my lightning icon right here to add it, and I'll write contact us. If yours is a text link, bear with me and we'll adjust that in styles. I'll also show you how to make any adjustments that you'd like to do in styles. So my contact us, and then I'll type in my page. Perfect. That looks great, and we set that up super quick. So now let's go over the footer with all of the momentum that we have from the header. So let's configure my footer. I can adjust its color, and I can adjust its compensation settings as we went over. Over here, I have 2 basic lines of text. I really love the idea of adding in an email here, and then a phone number. Perfect. You can also add in anything else that you'd like there, basically any basic text. Then we already have our legal column, so I'm going to add a new column by clicking this plus sign. This will add a group, so I'm going to give my group a name. I'll write resources. This isn't a link. This is simply a title for this group. Down here are my links, so I'll write blog here, and then link to my blog. Then I'll click this action icon right here to add another link into this group. Then I'll write about the company, and I'll smart link. You can repeat the links in your header here and add in other necessary links like legal resources. Remember that your header should be navigation for the site that are relevant to those visiting, whereas the footer is basically a hosting for the entire sitemap. So make sure to reference it as that. Legal resources can be saved to the footer, whereas things like contact us, about us, and all of that should realistically be in the header. Then you'll notice these grayed out social icons down here. I really want to promote my social media, so I'll go ahead and click one to activate it, and then type in the URL of that respective social media. Cool, so now my Facebook's linked, and I of course want to link my Twitter too, so people can see my tweets. And I'll have both of those open in a new tab, since I don't want to drive them away from my website just because they want to go see my awesome tweets. And that will wrap up elements. So now we have everything done for us. So my logos, my header, and my footer are all set, and they'll be used on all of my marketing site pages. Next up, we'll jump into styles. So grab some popcorn, because that'll be a longer one, where we'll go over styling your entire website and managing it from one place. Just a heads up, it's pretty awesome, so get ready for your jaw to drop. Okay, I promise this one will be fun, so I'm going to own up to that. Let's get you all set up in your Styles Manager. I really suggest you open up Unstack while watching this. So first, we're going to go section by section just because that makes the most sense. First, we have our color palette. This is where you'll pull in colors that are used on your current or previous website. Remember that there are millions of tools out there to help you identify these colors. One that I highly suggest is Colorzilla. I just open it, I use my pick from page, and then I can find the color of any element on that page and use its hex code to set up my color panel. To set up the hex code, I simply click on the color I want to change out, and then enter that hex code here. You'll notice these labels down here: brand primary, success, warning, dark background, dark text, and light text. So your brand primary should be the main color that you use on your website. This shouldn't be black or white, nothing against those colors, but those aren't what we call accent colors in the design world. This should be the color that you feel like represents your brand. The success and warning color can realistically be anything that you'd like to use across your site. The dark background can either be just a darker coloration, purple, black, or any color like that, or it can be a darker variation of your accent color. Your light background should be either an off-white or a full white. Your dark text should be any coloration that you'd like your text to be, but remember, you want to honor contrast for those who are visually impaired in some capacity. And then you have light text. Light text is just a lighter variation of the text color. This can be an accent-alike color, but remember that it should still be easily readable. Then down here are your fonts. You can select up to 4 fonts for your website, and they're all pulled in from Google Fonts. To find the fonts currently used on your active website, I highly suggest this Chrome widget called What Font. We have links to this in the onboarding guide. This will allow you to highlight any text and figure out what exact font is being used there. Then over here, I can just click the font that I'd like to replace, and from this drawer that will appear, I can select the one I'd like to switch it out to. My favorite part about this is it gives me a preview of what that font will actually look like, so I can see each font respective to itself. And you'll set that up 4 times to the 4 main fonts that you'll like to use across your site. Remember, 4 is the maximum, not the minimum. So if you only have 1 font that you like, feel free to just use 1. Then you have typography. Typography is how you control how different text stylings look on your website. So H1 is a style of typography. So this will normally be your page header, section header, etc. So you can style it by selecting the font family that you selected above and select which one of those 4 you'd like to use. I'll use bitter in this case. You select the font weight, I'll use medium, and the font size. This is an REM. I'll decrement that just a bit. And then your line height. This is the spacing between lines. And then the color that you'd like to select for this font. I'll use my dark text color. Perfect. Then in my section header, this will be my H2. So I can set this to Merriweather and whatever font weight I'd like to use here. I'll use regular for this case since we used medium for the one above. Then I can set up my font size, my line height, and my color. Let's jump back to H1 and let's talk about making sure that it's also up for the dark background. This is where you'll adjust the color to make sure that this font will still be visible on a darker background. I'm going to skip over the rest of these since they're the same exact setup and you'll be repeating the same variations of settings for them. And we'll jump down to highlight. Highlight is that stylistic highlight that we saw when editing some text. Here is where you'll set up the color that you want to use for that. I usually will use my warning color just because to me it makes it visually pop out. Then I'll of course adjust my settings for dark background to make sure that it will also work for that text style. That looks pretty good, so let's leave that alone. Then I'll do my quotes. Your quote mark is what will appear when you're doing a stylistic quote within the editor. You can edit your text here, which we've already reviewed what these settings do, except for font style, where you can make it italics. And then you have the mark. The mark you can adjust the size of and the color of. Don't forget to adjust this for dark background. I'll say that again and again, but make it a habit to whenever you're editing your Sales Manager, make sure to click this dark background button so you can see how it would look on a dark background, to make sure that you like both experiences. Then you have buttons. We'll spend a minute here because a button does have multiple different columns. So we first have text, what we've already seen, but there's one added friend that just popped in here called text shadow. This helps visually differentiate the text from the button behind it. So if you want to use a text shadow, you can make it a color like basically anything, but I'll set it to a pretty apparent color so you can see exactly what my text shadow is doing. So you'll see that little bit of green tint behind my primary action text. And I can adjust that by using this. So I can push it a little bit up, push out the spread. Realistically, I only use this if the text color and the background color of the button are extremely different. Now let's talk about adjusting the color of my button. So the background color I can adjust right here by selecting one of my setup in the top colors panel, or I can enter a hex code right here. But I'll switch this back to my brand primary. Then I can change the height of my button, so I can make it larger, I can make it smaller, anything I'd like to do there. And I can of course adjust the shadow of the button overall. Then my border, if I set it to 0, no border will appear, but if I set it to a positive number, then what will happen is a border will appear around the button. To make that border a bit more obvious, I'll adjust the color. Your border radius is how you can round the button. Even if a border isn't present, you can still use border radius to round the button. 0 means that it will be a full rectangle. 15 means that it will have this nicely rounded shape. 30 will be a pill-alike shape. And then the higher the number goes, the rounder the button will get. Hover is how you adjust how you can visually inform the visitor that the button is currently on hover and they can click it. So I usually suggest using the same colors that you used in shape and border here and just decrementing the opacity. So you notice I have my brand primary all set up and then my opacity is just a 0.6. This makes it so when I hover it, the opacity of the button goes down to visually inform the visitor that that button is what they are currently hovering. I'll make sure to adjust this for dark background too, of course, as you should. Perfect. This looks pretty good in my opinion, but feel free to customize this as much as you would like. You'll notice my primary button, I'm solely using my border and my hover to indicate that the button is being hovered. I could even lower this a bit more to make the visual a little bit more obvious that the button is currently hovered. So those are button settings. Feel free to toy around with that and realistically make the button look as you would like it to. This is completely your styles, so don't feel like you have to follow along with exactly what I'm doing. Just take what I'm doing and the steps that I'm using, and then replicate that with the styles you'd like to set up. Now my action link. The action link text color will also be used for hyperlinks, so make sure this is something you'd like to see across your site. So we have our text settings, and this text color will be what's used for hyperlinks. Then I can adjust my arrow by adjusting its color and size. And then of course, once more, my hover. Remember, I left the color the same and then just decremented the opacity. Then we have lists. Styling lists is pretty easy. So we have all of our text settings, but once more, we have a new friend joining us called bottom spacing. This is how I can add some spacing to the bottom of each list item to make it so that they're a little bit more spread out so that they're not so tightly wound together. Even though they're pretty tight-knit friends, it doesn't mean they always have to be close. Then we have our icons and our icon size. We saw this when we were doing quotes, so you should be a little bit used to it. And then I'll make sure to check on my dark background settings and make sure that those look good too. Then header navigation. I told you I would go over how to adjust all of those links and how to adjust the action link that's here. This we've already seen before, however, action is something we haven't. You can select through either using your primary button, secondary button, or a completely customizable action link. Feel free to toggle between that, whether you want a button or just a text link with an arrow within your header. Then, of course, hover settings is another thing that we'll go over. And then let's make sure my dark background looks good too. Perfect. That looks really nice. So we'll scroll past that. Then we have our footer navigation settings. This is where I can adjust my link settings, category settings, and my hover settings. That does wrap up the Styles Manager. But realistically, the Styles Manager should be something you take quite a bit of time on because this will be used universally across your website. So make sure that you explore this as much as you can. If you need any help, go to help.unstack.com. Thanks for following along today. Hey there, you've reached the bonus section. We're going to go over insights. Of course, this isn't as relevant on your first day of Unstack, since there won't be anything here. No worries, it's coming soon, I promise. But if you're a few days in, or a few months in, hopefully, fingers crossed that you're loving it so far, this is where you'll see exactly how your website's performing. So let's break it down together. First, we have page views. This is just how many times a page has been loaded on your website. Then you have uniques. This is how many people or IP addresses have visited your website. And this is how many sessions. Sessions is a 24-hour time period where somebody visited your website. So sessions and uniques will usually differentiate, whereas sessions will be higher than uniques. Down here is my engagement. This will break down the pages, their page views, uniques, and the average time on those pages. Test results is specific to A/B testing. You can find more about this at help.unstack.com. Conversions is the path that people are going to fill out a form. So it'll show me each page that somebody viewed before filling out a form. And I can toggle between organic traffic and my paid traffic. UTMs will break down my sources of visits to this website. It'll also break down what pages are doing the best in relevance to those sources, their bounce rates, revenue, average time on page, and page views. This is extremely beneficial, especially for paid advertising, which I can toggle to using the paid channel option. You can see what keyword and so much more. This is perfect for the modern day marketer using Facebook ads and all of that to fully understand where your traffic is coming from. Okay, that is a short wrap on the Insights panel. To learn more about each section of it, go to help.unstack.com for more informational videos. Overall, thank you so much for following along throughout this entire tutorial, and I hope that it's benefited you in many ways. If you need any additional assistance and want some hands-on help, feel free to email help@unstack.com.